blasters on full.
What's up guys, Gripe here with another review. Today we're going to check out the Revoltech Iron Man Mark 7, and this figure is part of the Legacy of Revoltech line. This is their reissue line where they redo some of the figures they've done in the past. And I actually like the packaging on this figure a little bit better than the original Revoltech packaging. I think it looks a little bit nicer. You've got the Legacy of Revoltech logo in the top left. Underneath that you've got a picture of the figure and the figure name, as well as the Avengers and Marvel logos in the bottom there. To the right of that you have a nice big window where you can see the figure and all the accessories. And in the bottom right corner you got the Kaiyodo logo. And on this side you have the figure number, LR041, picture of the figure, name of the figure, and the Legacy of Revoltech logo again. And on the back of the box we've got some pictures of the figure in different poses. We also have some close-ups of different areas of the figure, as well as a picture of all the optional parts that come with the figure. And on this side, it is the exact same as the other side. You've got the figure number, figure name, and the Legacy of Revoltech logo. And on top, you've got the Legacy of Revoltech logo again, name of the figure, and some more logos. And on the bottom, you've got some information about the revolver joints, which is always helpful. Now I'll crack open the box and see what's inside. You get this nice shield picture insert for the back of the box, which is a nice inclusion. And you also have a clear plastic stand. And this is your typical Revoltech stand. It's got the logo on it and two pegs. You got the smaller one here for the feet of the figure, and the larger one is for an optional arm, which is no longer included with the figures. You also get a name tag here. It's just plain black plastic with a peg hole on the bottom, but it's a nice inclusion. Just throw that in front of the figure for display purposes. And the accessories you get this nice blaster effect here. And it's a translucent plastic, orange color. It's got some nice silver paint accents on it and nice sculpt to it. You also have this longer one. It's pretty much the same thing, just the blaster effect itself is longer. Again, nice sculpt and paint on that as well. And this figure does come with 3 sets of hands. You have the fists here. These are nicely sculpted and they've got that nice glossy red paint on them. You can see all the nice details there on the knuckles. You also have the straight up hands. These are for the blaster effects. You can see the peg holes in the middle there. And again, these are nicely sculpted and painted. And it also comes with these open hands, and they have a white plastic in the middle instead of a peg hole for the blaster effects. And when you're changing the hands on the Revoltech, you do have to take off this hand armor. You can see it looks like they put this on while the paint was still wet, and you can see where it pulled off on the inside of the hand here. But that just slots in like that. And then you line up the holes, and that's where the peg goes into for the joint. So now check out the sculpt and paint on the figure itself, and overall I think it came out really good. I really like the eyes on this figure. You can see those look pretty good. The arc reactor unibeam on the chest is okay. Could have used a little bit more detail, but it's still not too bad. Also like all the details that went on the arms here, and the paint especially on this figure looks really good. It's a nice glossy red and gold. The back here has some really great details painted and sculpted on. And these flaps, if I can get them up, there we go. You can see there's details sculpted underneath, as well as on the top of the flap, and that looks really good. The nice silver jet there. The back of the neck and head has some nice sculpted details in it. The side of the face mask here, that's some nice detail in that little notch. The top of the chest looks really good. Again, all the paint is very crisp on this figure, which some of the Revoltechs have had an issue with. I also really like all the details they put in the armpit area here with that silver paint on there. And a lot of nice sculpted details there. One of the issues is you can see the paint rubbed off here, and it does rub against the thigh there, and it will come off, which is a little disappointing. Some nice details on the side of the torso. Back of the legs, you do have those big ugly Revoltech joints in the back of the knee, but the rest of the figure you can see here in the shoulder and in the elbows here, they used a red plastic, and it makes it look much nicer. Nice details here on the knee. I like that little silver accent there. Your boots also look really good. Great details with that gold accent there. Nice sculpted details on the boot itself. You also have some nice treading on the bottom, as well as some peg holes. And again, overall, I think this came out really good. I really like the paint job on this, and I think it came out much better than the Mark 21 I have from Revoltech. So now we'll check out the articulation on the figure, and as always with Revoltechs, it's a little tough to really show you the full amount of articulation, because you really have to play with those joints to get it, but I'll just give you the basics. You can have them look up really far, which is nice for flying poses. It looks down a good amount, and that is a double jointed Revel joint, and I'll pull it out and show you a little bit later. Can rotate the head a bit, and the neck also does have another joint inside the torso, so you can move that around. And let me pop this off so I can show you. And here you go. This is the double jointed Revel joint that is in the neck and head. And you can get some good articulation playing with that joint, although that's one of the ones that you really don't have to fiddle with too much. The shoulder pads are articulated, and those are on a small Revel joint. You can see there. That is embedded in the arm, so don't try to pull that part out. But the shoulder pad just pops right on that peg, and you do have rotation and hinge action on that. And as you position the arms, that shoulder pad, as you can see, just kind of moves out of the way, which is nice. The arms themselves go up a decent amount, and you do have rotation there at the shoulder. And let me pull this out so you can see. And this is a single Revel joint, one of the bigger ones. You can see it just pops right in that hole there. And again, you can play with that to get different angles out of the pegs, so you can hinge it in different directions. Although again, that's another one you really don't have to fiddle with too much. You have a single revolver joint in the elbow, and you can get some pretty good bend on that, well over 90 degrees. And just like all the Revoltech joints, you can rotate that pretty much at any joint. So you can see you can do it here at the shoulder, you can do it here at the elbow, and obviously at the wrist. And the wrists themselves are a smaller Revel joint, and that is a single joint. And that's the peg you would pop into the arm and the hand armor when you're replacing hands. And you can rotate and hinge that. Now I'll take a look at the diaphragm joint, and this is one of the large Revel joints. And this is a single joint as well. You can get pretty good movement out of this. Going back, you're a bit limited because of the back plates in the armor. You can bend them forward a good amount though. And again, this is one of those joints you just kind of have to pop the torso off and play with it, but you can rotate it fairly easy. Just when you want to get some side-to-side bend is when you really have to play with that joint. The hips are about the only joint that doesn't use the revolver joint, and as you can see, they're a little bit less articulated. There's just a lot of plastic in that socket that just hinders the movement. You can rotate the thigh there, but you can see it rubs against the inner part and does scuff the paint, which is pretty annoying. It uses a double revolver joint for the knee, so you can get some really good articulation on that, although it is really exposed and does look a little funky when you're at a big bend. And when you get a full bend on that top joint, you can really get him to kick his own butt, which is nice, but again, you just have a really exposed joint there. You can hide it in most poses, but it is a little annoying. And you can only kick forward about that far. The plastic starts to hit on the hip area there with the thigh. And same thing when you go back, you can really not get far at all. Again, same thing. Plastic is just hitting that hip area. The feet are on a single revolver joint, so you can get some good articulation out of those as well. You have them bend down almost straight, which is nice. They only go forward about that far, but you are hitting that armor plate. And that armor plate is on a small revolver joint, which is nice, so you can rotate and hinge it. And the back armor plate here, that is just a hinge joint. As you can see, you can just get that up and down. And this is the one on the small revolver joint. And you can get some good ankle pivot out of this as well. And as always, you can pop the foot off and play with the joint to get some more. But you can see you can get a decent range of motion there by default without really having to play with the joint. You can also rotate the foot fairly well. You do have to kind of point it down to rotate it around because of the armor plates on the side. Now we'll check out the size and scale of the figure. And like most of the Revoltechs, he is a little bit on the small size for 1/12 scale. As you can see, he is exactly at 6 inches, maybe a hair over, but that's about it. And here he is next to the Figure Arts Mark 45 on the left and the Marvel Legends Mark 43 on the right. As you can see, he is the smallest and certainly the widest. So I think the proportions are a little bit off, and he's also a little bit small. Realistically, for 1/12 scale, Iron Man should be sitting at about 6.5 inches, considering Marvel lists the Iron Man armor standing at about 6.5 feet tall. So overall, I think it's a pretty good Iron Man Mark 7. It's certainly not the best out there, but it does fill a nice gap in between a Marvel Legends on the low end and, say, a Figma or a Figure Arts on the high end. It has the usual Revoltech issues of it being a little small for the scale and a little bit off proportion-wise, as well as the exposed joints, but it does make up for that by having great articulation. And compared to the original Revoltech Mark 7, I think it's got a much nicer, more consistent paint app on it. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. Subscribe for more.
Set blasters on full.